serving for parents, all right, who have been kind of taking that role of case manager themselves. So it's like, be careful what you wish for. You wanted coverage, right. Now you have coverage, but now you have the rules of application of coverage, how right. Payment gets authorized. To coordinate that, the expectations of the parents, the needs of the parents, sometimes the exhaustion of the parents, and to coordinate that with the reality of payers and that whole world, and treatment plans and working within authorizations for care, to coordinate that, to support the parents in that, and to also, of course, for the BCBA, they're making the treatment plans, and somebody in the center or just the BCBA themselves is the one communicating to the person at the plan and saying, listen, I really want to explain Timmy with you because I don't think 20 hours a week is going to work, and here's why, and here's the documentation. So that's the usual role of the therapist, to ask for and document the need for larger coverage, authorization of a larger amount of care. Where's the parent in all of this? The parents, very often, they're passionate about it, and they're being left out of this discussion. And for years, before there were mandates, they drove the discussion. And now they're being relegated to a secondary position, and it's all between the provider and the plan, and they get angry. So the need to coordinate through this process, not just the treatment process, but the reimbursement process with the parents, is going to be a marker for quality. So a center can certainly do that. In terms of
Gotcha.
In terms of modality of delivery of care, the primary modality still is in the home. And that involves all of that transport. And the reason for that is that just the most basics of ABA is, let's say you're getting really down in the weeds and you're saying, we have identified the following areas of behavior, the following areas of social interaction as areas we want to work on. So where are these areas? Well, they tend to be in the home, or they tend to be in the school, or they tend to be at meals, or with siblings, or with, you get the idea. And so with that, and so the new, I was going to say sculpting, it's not quite that way, reinforcing and non-reinforcement, again, this is Skinner stuff at its heart. ABA is essentially behavioral psychology. It is behavioral. It's outside-in activity, not inside-out activity. It's not insight-oriented. It is behavior-oriented. And so as behavior-oriented, where do these behaviors impact their world? What are these behaviors? What are the situations of these behaviors? They tend to be in the home. They tend to be in the community. So I don't see a big movement from that. I think some things like group activities can be at the center, okay? And you can mock up environments in the center. And so, you're coming to the center for a few hours and you're working on play situations, particularly if the child's very young, 3, 4, 5. You can work in play situations that you can artificially create in the center. But it's not going to be the same as your siblings in your home. It's not going to be the same. So you can do some activities, but for the most part, I don't see a great movement to a center-based activity. That's why I tend to talk about aggregators, centers that have this stable of BCBAs and assistants and techs and have figured out how to coordinate the hierarchy of functionality and transport and communication with the parents and all of that stuff, that they figured out how to do that at a high level. And of course, what's their outcomes? What's the evidence base on their outcomes? So I think that's important. Telehealth is interesting. I think that telehealth has, it has yet to be determined what is the efficacy here. I did the virtual care contracting. I help develop the whole thing for regions. That's another little area I can do. And without getting stupid about definitions, let's say telehealth / telemedicine, because these words have slightly different definitions, virtual care for the whole bundle. Virtual care efficacy has yet to be really established for ABA. I think it will be. I think it has to be, particularly for rural, underserved areas. But I don't see it as a huge driver, not now, not yet. There just isn't enough, because so much of this reinforcement stuff that takes place in terms of, behaviors that you want to augment and behaviors you want extinction of this behavior and augmentation of this other behavior, it's so hands-on, it's so right there that it's going to be tough to do it in a virtual setting. That's just my opinion, but I'm a fan of virtual care, and so I think its time will come. Its appropriateness will be settled. You can do it to reinforce this, but here and there you can't do it. It's got to be hands-on. You got to be able to actually look at the behavior real time and do something right there in the moment. So that's my opinion on that one. The final thing I would say on quality is integration. Is that, and it's also, by the way, an augmentation of income stream, and so it's a win-win. And that is to have conventional psychotherapy take place at the center or through the center. So, for example, you'll find that there is, in fact, we're back to the diagnosis, sometimes, right now, perhaps, autism is the flavor of the month, We've watched, historically we watched ADHD become the flavor of the month, and, a plethora of diagnoses of attention deficit. And I think a lot of these same kids are now being diagnosed being on the spectrum. Yes, there probably is a lot of misdiagnosis going on, but the diagnosis itself, we're dealing with kids who have problems, and the science is just catching up. It'll get better, and the diagnosis will get better, and the specificity of what behaviors produce what diagnosis, produce what levels of treatment, all of that will get better, which begs the point that you need the flexibility to be able to look at these kids, if I can use the term, holistically, and maybe it'll be ABA, maybe it'll be on a spectrum needing ABA, and maybe it's a severe social anxiety. And what it needs is a good master's level therapist or psychologist, child psychologist, to work with the kid and bill normal psychotherapy codes, 90837, and normal family codes. And because, it's not just an autism diagnosis, there is anxiety diagnosis. It's not an either-or situation. You can have both. You can have both a family being seen or the child being seen or the parents being seen individually for social anxiety type situations and diagnosis and treatment plan of social anxieties, etc., other kinds of overlapping sets of mental disorders, along with a diagnosis that young person's on the spectrum. This could even change during age. You've got an older kid, you're doing less ABA, you're doing more psychotherapy. And so does your center have that? Does it have that capability? I for the most part, I don't see much of that, I think, and so I can mark that as a quality indicator for the future, because I just see BCBAs and assistants in techs and not integrating with psychologists or master's level therapists for quote-unquote normal or usual psychotherapy. So I'd like to see virtual care for the future. I'd like